Well, howdy, everybody. This is the Catholic Family Podcast, as you probably guessed at this point. Welcome into Dad, Mom, Dan, and Lisa. To everybody else, you can call them Mom and Dad too. I think a lot of people actually do call them Mom and Dad. So
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah.
that's also fine. Eric, also known as BFF Caveman, he also has several different names. We thank them for joining us, and we're kind of going back to the I suppose old days where we tried to do more live streams, partly because we love having the interactions with you guys. So we'll kind of let this warm up slowly so that everyone can join in, and hopefully we get at least maybe 10 people watching so you guys can comment. That's what we like the best about these things. It's live has its issues. Obviously, it's a little bit more dangerous. Eric might say something really, really edgy and get us in trouble. But we really enjoy it. We especially love talking with you guys. So please leave your comments and tell us if there's something you want us to talk about. We'd love that. And if anyone who's been on the show before, especially, let us know live. And we'll try to add you on and make it kind of a group conversation. We want to talk today about a few things. It was originally going to be kind of about Hollywood, the fall of Hollywood, politics, what's going on in politics, kind of culture and whatever people bring up, I suppose. But last night, I think it was last night, here in Paris, it was last night, I believe, the Olympic opening ceremony took place. And it definitely gave us some things to talk about. Pretty insane. I didn't watch them live. I don't think any of us did. Probably. I think in the U.S., I think you have to pay for it. Don't you have to have a Peacock membership to watch?
I think so. Yeah.
What? I mean, first of all, that's a whole nother topic. But give me a break. Are you serious? I just saw Charles Barkley going crazy about this because TNT lost its NBA rights after the next season. And they can't stream it, so it's going to be on Amazon. So you're going to have to pay to watch a lot of your NBA games. This entire streaming idea is it's a nightmare. Anyway, that's not the topic. We can cover that in a bit, but it just blows me away. You have to pay to watch the Olympics, really? Though now I think it's actually a good thing because I think many people are going to boycott this year's Olympics because of what happened during the opening ceremony. And I don't know, Mom, Dad, you guys want to start it off? I know you guys have kind of seen the lowlights of it. I mean, what exactly happened in Paris?
I can go back a long way. I remember all the way back to 1984 Olympics, and before then that really, I looked at the Olympics for a long time. You had kind of a fallen world out there, but I always looked at the Olympics as this place where humanity could come together and all share in some goodness for 2 weeks. And that's really kind of what the Olympics were. And everybody marched in under their flag, and you had beautiful opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies. It was kind of a celebration of mankind.
There were some bad Olympics, the 1968, the 1972 Olympics.
Yeah.
If you look back at history, politics has reared its ugly head.
And so
Munich had a bit of a stain, I suppose.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it is. It's a stage for whatever is allowed to be put on the stage. I think.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's gotten down to some pretty low places.
Yeah, but I think it was 2012 was the London Olympics, and you started to have these really globalist, diabolical. The one in 2012, if nobody's gone back and seen that, because it's coming up a lot in the discussion today, that was one where you basically had this big nightmarish scene of children in hospital beds with nurses around them, and then this grotesque, huge figure comes up with a hypodermic needle.
Yeah,
and they were basically, it was predictive programming that said that they were predicting COVID basically 8 years in advance.
Yeah.
And so I mean that was incredibly creepy, and that for us at least was kind of the first time we started looking at these Olympics and said, man, these opening ceremonies, some of them are great. I mean, Russia,
China. And actually, I want to comment on that
great.
Real quickly, because I think you can see a macrocosm of that, because you see Russia's, if you watch it, like one of their main opening ceremonies, they have this beautiful ballroom dancing to Tchaikovsky. Yeah. Okay. Yep. China had, 1,500 people banging a drum at the same time in exact perfect unison. And just think about that. To me, that perfectly encapsulates what is going on here. Russia is it trying to have this old world traditionalism. I'm not saying they're perfect, but it makes sense. China is this, hey, we are almost machines. We are like exactly that. This is how we work. We are very a well-oiled machine, even though they're communists. But I mean, still. And then you have France. It's like, okay, what are you trying to tell people here? I mean, Eric, I don't know if you have any comments here to start.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to comment on that part, I think you see the countries that are basically tearing themselves apart versus the ones that are trying to build themselves up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You have the West basically in full destruct mode. So, and it was interesting. I think I don't know if it was the last time the Olympics were in Paris, but I was reading an article. I think it was 100 years ago, 1924 was in Paris, the Olympics, and there was this picture just showing one of the big cathedrals just jam packed with people, the athletes going to mass before the opening ceremony. Like we've come a long way in 100 years.
Very fast. Yeah, very fast.
Well, and we should, we don't have a ton of people joining in, but everyone who is, please join us in the comment section and like and share and all that stuff. You guys know how this works. But kind of what would happen, I mean, there were a few things. I mean, really the big one that I'm sure everyone's seeing, and I thought about sharing pictures, but honestly, they're so grotesque, I don't really want to. So I imagine a lot of people have already seen them. I don't actually want to describe it that in detail. Pretty much they had a bunch of drag queens, pretending to act out the Last Supper scene by Michelangelo. Michelangelo. Yeah, that was Michelangelo. Or that was Da Vinci. Thank you. I was like, wait a second. As soon as I said that, I was like, wait, that wasn't Michelangelo. Da Vinci. Thank you. And obviously, I mean, just like shockingly blasphemous and grotesque. And you got to wonder what exactly. Anyway, so there was also a scene where one of these men pretending to be women, is dancing around on this table singing. They had a pale horse running along the Seine River, kind of a reference to the apocalypse, the end of the end of the world, and how death will come. And I don't know, is it coming for us now? I think, as Dad said, the London Olympics talking about the kind of foreshadowing COVID.
Right.
I mean, it at least makes you kind of think. It's like, okay, what are you saying? I mean, and so I guess this would be my question. Maybe Eric, I'll ask you this first. Do you think this is the agenda of one just stupid guy, some director, which I've seen is some gay Jew? That's true. YouTube, don't you dare ban me. He is a gay Jew. Like, that's a fact. Go look it up. So YouTube, you ban me, I'm going to sue you. He is a gay Jew. And so do you think it's just this one lunatic, or do you think this is a broader thing where it's like Macron or the leaders of France are like, hey, let's push an agenda?
Well, it's obviously broader than just one guy. But, I'm a believer and never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. And so from a perspective of, was it a dumb move? Sure. But I could also probably make the devil's advocate position, like literally the devil's advocate, that, well, hey, we're talking about the Olympics. You weren't planning on doing that, were you?
Huh. True. But we're also not going to watch.
We're also, yes, absolutely. Right. We weren't anyway. You have to buy Peacock. Yeah. So, I guess I could say the benign argument would be this one guy thought it was a great idea, and in a certain way it worked because we're now talking about the Olympics. But I think we all know, like, as far as the general cultural decline goes, this is not, a one person thing.
Mom and Dad, what do you guys think? Do you guys think it's just one guy being dumb, or?
No. I think there are layers of agenda behind this, and it was premeditated, it was planned out, and it was very intentional. I mean, that's my thought on it. But I think that the other part that you're seeing is that I think the whole Bud Light fiasco showed us that people are sick of it. People have had it, and I think we're beyond where we're going to just put up with it anymore. And I think you're going to see the Olympics literally boycotted here. And I think that for a long time, I mean, you go back to the 80s or 90s or whatever, and Disney was in everybody's crosshairs, and we would need to boycott Disney, and some people did, most people didn't, and they fell a little bit, and we've kind of ramped these things up, but now we've gotten to the point where Bud Light showed we can actually band together, boycott these things, and have success with it.
And we actually want to talk about Disney as our second topic. Sorry, real quick. That's actually one of the topics we want to talk about today. And it's ironic that I think they haven't been boycotted. They're just so bad at what they do now that they're losing money anyway. So we actually didn't have to. I've boycotted Disney a long time ago, and people know, anyone who watches this show knows I'm a big anti-Disney person, but they just produce bad content. And I think it's the same thing as you said, Dad. I think this is what happened here in France, that they think they're cute and they're going to pay for it. They're going to I think they're really going to pay. But sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, I think I'm used to calling you Mr. Davis. Yeah, no, I think your point is a good counterpoint to mine, that it probably wasn't a success from that perspective, right? The Bud Light thing has shown everyone that, it's not a good move anymore, at least financially. And so why continue to try shoving it down our throats? Like, that's an interesting move.
Yeah, I mean, and and like we call it a woke agenda, but to me, this was like a very extreme version of woke agenda. I mean, this wasn't just like, I mean, I guess it is Bud Light. I mean, I guess it is Dylan Mulvaney. I guess it is just kind of, hey, we're going to pretend that these, but I mean, like, this is what I don't understand. Like, mom and dad froze. Hopefully, they'll be back soon. But what I don't understand is, how can this possibly be attractive to men or women, right? I mean, I don't understand. Like, I mean, how do you have a guy with a beard, ugly, grows his hair out and puts on a dress or women's underwear, and then acts like a woman, and it's like, oh yeah, this is. I cannot. It has to be insanity, like actual. Like, I think these people are mentally ill. It has
to be insanity, but I think it's also just, it's funny. Like, I've heard from some people, like, coworkers and stuff, who watch all these dumb shows and they're just like, oh, it's hilarious. It's like, okay, if that's your idea of hilarious, I do think something's wrong with you. But
yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily always a depravity thing. It's just
away.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross and funny. Kind of like those, we had that string of like dark, gross out comedies, 10-ish years back. I think it's the same type of thing as that. Just kind of shock factor.
Yeah, okay. I can get that. I mean, but yeah, okay. So you mean, so it's kind of in our culture because it is kind of this like, yeah, here's a person pretending to be but they don't actually buy the agenda that these people need to be treated like women. They're just kind of like,
I'm sure some of them do, but yeah.
Yeah, sure, but it's got to be a minority, right? I mean, that's something I was talking today with my father-in-law. Kind of like, how is it this tiny minority of people? First of all, it's a 0.01% who actually believe in this idea or who actually suffer from this mental illness. It's a tiny percentage. And then you have maybe 1% who actually supports them. And then I guess it's another 20, I don't know what the percentage is, that then kind of follows along or pays, pays into this stuff. And I guess I think after something like this, I think it's going to really hurt them. I think it's actually going to really kick them back. I think it's going to be, it's like, as Dad said, like Bud Light. I think it's not going to help them. It maybe got them noticed, got the Olympics, people are talking about it, but boy, not all news is good news. Not in this world, not in the world of social media where things spread within seconds, because it's not the same as it used to be. No, when you said no news, or when you said not no news, when you say bad news, what's the saying?
There's no bad publicity.
Thank you. There's no bad publicity. Right. So I mean, this idea, boy, you're helping me out, Eric. My brain's about half speed already.
I should not exactly sleep for 2 days in a row always.
Exactly. But I mean, that's how it used to be, because everything was a lot slower, right? But now news is every millisecond, so it doesn't work that way. So I think they're kind of trapped in this old idea of how it used to work. And I think, they're gonna pay for it. I think, and I think, and that's, I guess that would be my question. My next question, Mom and Dad, I'll ask you this. I know I already know what you think, but I mean, you guys think that you should boycott the Olympics and just pay them no heed?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I think so. I do not judge somebody who does not boycott the Olympics.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
In the same way that I don't judge somebody who doesn't boycott Disney. We all come to our conclusions at different times. I think it's a personal thing. However, I think that my argument is, and in particular, for so many reasons, that we should not buy into this behavior. And watching it, you're paying for it. You are literally nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things I was trying to think of an example or a metaphor that would explain why I absolutely could not watch the Olympics right now. If somebody I loved, say Dan's parents, my parents, if they were still alive, or say one of our priests or the bishop, were being mocked and in a show on a stage wherein we knew that it was them, I don't care what the organization was, I would boycott them in every possible way.
Right.
Okay. Why on earth would I feel differently about an organization that mocks our Lord and
Yeah.
Christianity? And not only that, but everything that is dear to us in a conservative way. I understand that they were mocking the Mona Lisa of all things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
There was
Statue of
a
Liberty.
bullet-ridden Statue of Liberty. It's almost as if they were making the point that everything that good people take for granted as wholesome or normal is being shot to pieces. And why on earth would you in any way want to pay to watch that? I feel so sorry for the athletes. It's not the athlete's fault.
Right.
However, if I had a child that was going to be in these Olympics and they knew what this opening ceremony was going to be about, I would be upset with them if they went through with these Olympics.
Yeah,
I think
and
Christian athletes should back out.
They should back off. Yeah,
I mean, it's a nightmare for them, but
yeah, and it's their dream. I mean, it's literally their dream dashed.
Terrible.
But at the same time, I mean, think about this one for a minute. You had the story of the trans men dressed as women that were in these swimming competitions, right? All you needed was one swimming competition where the girls lined up on the starting block and didn't swim until the guy was finished. Okay, in unison, that would have shut the whole thing down. And if you get athletes, these Christian athletes that say, yeah, you know what, I can't endorse this, I can't be a part of it, it wrecks my dream. But I think that if you had even a handful of them, it would be powerful.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit late now. I wonder how many of them had any idea. Well, I'm sure that they participated in the opening ceremony.
No, but I think they walk into the arena. No, I don't think they had any idea. I can't even imagine.
They didn't have any idea.
But there are too few people who have that kind of conviction anymore. We aren't taught that. That isn't what is held up as heroic. We have fallen so far in our character that they would be looked at as idiots if they stood up for their faith in this way. I mean, it's just the way our world is anymore. God help us that this is changing. I think that in some places we are seeing it change. I think that the pendulum is starting to drop just because it is so absurd. And I think this is going to get a lot of airtime.
I think a lot of this craziness is like the death throes, in my opinion, right?
Agreed.
I mean, you have Bud Light.
Absolutely.
Bud Light was really the nail in the coffin, and now they know that they're losing the culture war, to put it bluntly. And now they're just doing everything they can. But once again, that contrast, like the bullet-ridden Statue of Liberty that they gave us to celebrate our independence.
Right.
Like, could you imagine any of these other countries, communist countries, Russia, China, any of these others, doing anything that would show their Statue of Liberty equivalent in a negative light? It's just mind-blowing. It's like we're suicidal as a society.
Well, and it gets into a real interesting question that I'll put to all three of you here, that basically we talked about a little bit beforehand. Is they will pick on Christians this way. They won't pick on Muslims this way, because they know that the Muslims would pick up swords and fight them physically. We don't. But is that to our is that a good thing for us, or is that
it proves that we're right?
Right. Yeah.
It proves that we're true.
That we're not going to pick up arms. Yeah, we're not going to pick up arms. We're going to pray. We're going to band together. We're going to do soft protests. We'll not buy their products, things like that. But we won't respond violently.
Well, and the best way to win is through our faith.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that, of course, violently against a person, I don't think there's really almost ever an excuse unless you're defending yourself. But I do think violence against idols, I think there's plenty of proof of that throughout the New and Old Testament, where it's like, hey, if look at the throwing the Pachamamas into the river. I think that was one of the few great acts of heroism we've had in the last decade, and I think it was an amazing thing that Alexander Chugwell did, and at a great risk to himself, a married man, and that's amazing. I think we need more of that. There was another, blasphemous statue here, I think in Vienna, somewhere in Austria. It's always Austria.
In Iowa.
And someone came and sawed off, I think sawed off the head of it, just kind of destroyed the statue. And I think we do need more of that. I mean, again, yeah, you can't go ahead and attack people. That's never right. YouTube, you hear us, and it's not. I mean, really, being Christians, that's not right. But going and tearing down blasphemous things.
Well, our Lord turned over the tables in the temple.
Right.
He gave us the example. There is righteous anger, and that's as long as you're not hurting somebody. But
yeah,
it's
thing
interesting.
With Moses, right? He comes down from the mountain. First thing he does is smashes the tablets.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like, really, guys? No, and I think the good doctor here, he's right. It's not about the money, and I think you see that, and it's again another one of the topics I wanted to talk about was Disney. But Disney has lost since they started their. I didn't do a ton of research, guys. Sorry about this because I was busy this weekend, and well, that's just how I am. But Disney, I think they started their streaming program in 2019, and since then they've lost 13 billion. I think it was 11 billion, 13 billion dollars, and don't show any signs of recouping it. That's from their streaming, so that's not all of Disney. That's just their streaming program, and that's I think that's pretty fascinating because again, I think it shows you again that there is this woke mind virus, which we all see all amongst us in culture. I think it's failing. I think it is really truly failing, and I think France, back to politics, is really interesting right now because they actually just held elections and they got Macron's group. They got smoked.
Yeah.
I mean, really smoked. They only held together a majority because literally every party, or not, I shouldn't say literally, but almost every party in the country got together to stave off the Le Pen, her right wing group, even though she's honestly pretty much a liberal. I mean, she's really not that right wing, but you see what's going on in France. She's considered this like lunatic Trump, and she's really not. I mean, she's honestly kind of terrible herself, but I mean, it shows you the state that France is in. But you do see the younger generations are really turning on them. They're really there. It's Gen Z and actually even the millennials who are the ones who are saying, "Hey, this is dumb. No more of this garbage." And I think that's what we need. We need these people, these youngsters, to stand up and tear down some idols. And I mean, I would love to see that in Paris. I mean, if there's anyone who's going to riot in the streets, it's our Parisians. That is including our good Catholic French. They love to get to the streets, which has its points. Don't burn down buildings and stuff, but get out there and yell a little bit.
Yeah, and I think to this point that they are just trying to send a message, and I tend to agree. They can lose all. The people who are behind this are so wealthy that that they don't really care anymore. But I tend to agree with Eric that they've lost the hearts and minds of the regular people because we've awakened, and I think you can credit the internet, you can credit the Trump movement, whatever. There are a lot of different movements, and it's all worldwide where people have awakened to these evils. And I think that it's a little bit like an alcoholic. Once you have fessed up and understood the problem, then you can start to take action. And I think we're kind of in that taking action phase now.
Is this the mass formation psychosis that we went through with
COVID? Yeah.
That and the one scientist, I never remember his name, who actually became famous on the internet explaining about mass formation. Basically, the larger it is, the faster it falls, so that it can only it's top heavy. It's eventually going to fall over, and I think that is what we are finally seeing. That it's not just Disney, it's not just Bud Light. It's is it Tractor Supply? It's places you would never even think. And almost everybody that goes woke right now goes broke very quickly. And then the turnover is very fast now that they're like, oh, whoops. Except for the Olympics, I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
The last one I saw is Harley Davidson. If there's a group of
Harley Davidson of all the
anti-trans,
that one blew my mind.
Yeah,
it's that suicidal tendency. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wait, they had a woke what?
Yeah, apparently they're pro-trans or something.
What?
Yeah.
I just why does that make? I just don't even like. Okay, like Disney, I understand because Disney, it's run by communists or whatever you want to call them, people who really want to control our children and who want to push their agenda to the youngsters. But eventually they're also a money-making machine, right? So that especially someone with like Harley Davidson or like Bud Light. How does that possibly make any sense? I mean, eventually they have to just say, "Hey guys, this is not working." But as you
A lot
said,
of these
they still did it in Paris after they saw in the U.S. And they know
Yeah.
you have a
And
billion
you have
That's just
both
Catholics.
sides. I
How many
think-
Christians are there in the world? It's insane.
Didn't Google like lay off their whole DEI staff?
a lot of
these companies that you
yeah.
never think
Yeah.
never think they're being smart, and then you have these other ones that are just 5 years behind or something, and they think it's cool still. I don't understand. I think incompetence really
It's
rules
sort of
this
an
world.
insanity, isn't it? I mean, isn't that define insanity? That you see the bad
You do the
results
same
of the
thing over and
You
over,
just do it
getting the
over
same
and
result.
Yeah.
But I think what you have in a lot of these organizations, especially and probably in our government as well, is you'll have a handful of leaders, thought leaders, and everybody around them is just sycophants. And then I've seen this in action. They sequester themselves, and so out of a 70-hour work week they may put in, 40 or 50 of those hours are put in meetings where all these people are sitting together in a room and just kind of becoming a cult around one or two people, and there's not a lot of good critical thought going on, and I think it makes them susceptible to these agendas that come in and say, hey, we can get you into new markets and to new demographics by going this direction, and they just for whatever reason they're vulnerable to it because I think that they kind of collectively get stupid.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
and you've
tribal
seen this in
leaders
the
that are losing their tribe.
Yeah.
They don't seem to know they're losing their tribe.
And in the business world, like that's been my experience too. When you have these big meetings, you have 80-90% of the people there who really just don't have any strong opinions one way or another. All it takes is one or two with a strong opinion, and pretty soon you'll have everyone having that same strong opinion. Just that echo chamber mentality. And you have the same thing, I would argue, with Vatican II, right? Not all of the bishops who were there were intending to change or, infiltrate the church. But I just think there's a lot more of that than we think. A lot more just general.
And cowardice. It's a lot of it's cowardice, as we said before. A lot of it's just like this. I don't want to lose my comfortable position. I don't want the discomfort. I'd really rather just, let's just wait and see. And I mean, some things like Vatican II, you can kind of understand because that really was like late, because they literally changed that during the Vatican, during the council. Like, hey, by the way, we ripped up all of the actual plans, and here you go. So I understand the confusion there. So that's a tough one, but it is also, I mean, eventually you got to see is like, okay, no, this is absolutely wrong. And I think that if you have this 80-90% of people in the room who actually might be against it, or maybe not, but they might be, maybe if even half of them or a percentage of them stand up, if one person stands up, then you're more likely to have two, right? And then it builds and builds and builds. And I think it is that literally that individual heroism that we absolutely desperately need in society, which I think is growing.
Okay, and I think that we just got a message and lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Keep going. I want to go to the answer.
Well. Speaking of losing your train of thought, I mean, part of what I think the issue has been too is that I tend to blame a lot of it on the baby boomers. And I think the baby boomers are really one of the worst generations maybe ever of all time. And I think we've seen that. I think as they die off, God bless them, I think you're seeing a better world. I mean, that sounds really harsh, but not all, of course, everyone knows this is very general. There are some very, very great baby boomers. Mom, I know, is one at the very, very bottom end of the baby boomers. So it's certainly not all of them, but as a generation, they're terrible. They really kind of ruined the world. They ruined all the wealth that the U.S. had, certainly, and I think really the Western world as a whole. And I think also what happened since Vatican II, really since the baby boomers kind of started to run things too, was we really became a feminine world. It's like we are feminized. Like the masculinity is almost non-existent. And I mean, where do you see anything masculine these days? Even as we see, sports used to be like that was the last bastion kind of masculinity, right? And even that's been taken over by your woke agendas, which are feminine. Absolutely.
Right.
So it's really nothing exists almost that's actually masculine.
Well, and it's something we've been talking about, Imam and I have been talking about recently is the Donald Trump campaign and the fact that he goes into these UFC championship fights and he gets these huge, gigantic ovations, and he's got Hulk Hogan at the RNC doing his shtick, and I mean he's really trying to present this manhood type of masculine image out there and to try to turn people around. But then on the other side, I think it's been fascinating to watch this week that you've got JD Vance, who's in trouble for basically taking aim at the cat ladies, right? The whining, the your liberal single,
Miserable.
whining cat ladies. And I hate to say, but I think he was right on target. Boy, he's getting a lot of abuse for it.
Well, people purposely misunderstand. I have a much loved sister who is a childless cat woman who's voting for Trump hands down.
Yeah, right.
And she would be terrible if she was running the world. I love you, but I'm glad she's not in charge of running our country.
She would whip it into shape. Come on, Kevin.
In some ways, yes. But I mean, I think you kind of need. I mean, look at the founding of the country. I mean, I think that's something that many people. I can tell you. I'm listening now to a story or to the history of the revolution. And it's really fascinating because I mean I know I always think of these as old men. I think of them as these old dudes, wearing with white hair. They were young. They were like the average age of the Founders of the Declaration was something like 28 or something. It's something.
I think Jefferson was in his like 20 or 21 when he wrote the Declaration.
He's young 20s. He's young.
Well,
I mean, these were young men with a lot of virulence.
And when they were in 5th grade, they were doing high school work too. So people were raised differently,
much
had
better
different
educated.
Character at that time, grew up faster at that time.
But I guess my point being that it was a masculine world. It was a world that you had to be tough. You had to learn. You had to. You're going out and shooting your food. Not all of these guys. Obviously, some of them were aristocrats, really, but not all of them. I mean, some of them were really bootstrapped guys who really had testosterone. They were actually fighting battles. They were actually, going out in the streets. I mean, and again, I'm not saying we need to fight battles. I think we shouldn't actually, but that mentality, that manliness, and I think Trump, as you said, in a way, I mean, he absolutely showed, for sure, no one can deny it. He showed actual personal heroism, like actual bravery and courage, literally under fire. And that's something that if that doesn't get him a couple million votes, then we're done. I mean, I don't know what will. And I think Trump my guess is I think he's just given up on the women vote. I think he's just like, I mean, he showed that with JD Vance. He's like, nope, I don't even care. I'm done. I'm done trying to.
He really doubled down on that.
Oh, he doubled down. I think he's like, women, I don't care. You vote like idiots. So I'm honestly done with the women's vote. And so I think he's just going hardcore after the men, the male independent. And I think that,
but I think he's also getting some of the women's votes, right? I know a couple people who like JD Vance a lot as women, right?
Yeah. Oh, you're smart women, of course.
Not
again.
He's
this
smart,
is generalities,
but he's also
of course.
cute. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and he's a family man. I mean, so the women who actually have a head on their shoulders and actually, live a normal life, like have children and in homes, and they're the ones who actually make have sense and are going to be the ones who will vote for Trump. So that, of course, I think that's true. But the suburban, the suburban mother, these women who are pro-abortion. That's a big. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps coming back to me too with with this Paris thing too. Is someone mentioned in the chat, Baphomet and the devil, and I mean, I think it really shows you. Some of these things really show you that the devil has really had a grasp on our society for maybe 60 years or 100, maybe, if that's what people would. Dad, you have the theory maybe since 1917, and I think the insanity of abortion, it even still, and like how even JD Vance has to like soften his opinion on abortion to try to be vice president is nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I know that, there's a lot of consternations really split our group. I mean, I see comments out there even from people associated with podcasts here that are really discussing with Trump and JD Vance for having softened their stance on abortion. But I think that the reality is that the Democrats have nothing to run on. They're going to run on Orange Man bad, and they're going to run on abortion. That's because they're down to, like we've been saying, they're losing the culture war. They have
Harris is pretty charismatic, Dad. Let's
yeah,
be fair. He's pretty
right.
charismatic.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dad, but isn't it amazing how the media just comes out all of a sudden? It's like, Harris is so amazing. They're like in love with her all of a sudden, like literally like this switch, it just flipped. It's like, no, everyone knows, guys. Everyone knows she's terrible.
Still an idiot. Yeah, and it's actually a lot of your inner city, blacks that are the first to call her out as an idiot and don't like her at all. But they've got abortion. I mean, that is, you think about it, that is their blessed sacrament. It's the devil's blessed sacrament. This is my body, right? And so it's what it's how they're going to go down with the ship. And I think that what happened, just looking at politically, if Trump had come up and said, yep, we're going to make a national abortion ban and we're going to do that and we're going to put more pro-life, justices on the Supreme Court and we're going to defund Planned Parenthood and we're going to go pedal to the metal, that would have allowed the Democrats to make that the number one issue that we're fighting. You got to ask, is that really where we wanted the Overton window? Is that where we wanted the discussion of this year's political battle to take place? And I don't think we did. And so basically Trump tried to take it away from them by softening his position. Frankly, politically, I mean, I don't like it from a religious or a moral standpoint, but I think politically it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, right? Like super against the statements that he has made, softening his stance on it. Cowardly, whatever. Maybe it's just politically shrewd. I'm not a fan of that. But I do agree that, strategically, it makes complete sense.
Right.
And, long term, if it means he gets elected again and puts another Supreme Court, judge or two, maybe it works out.
Oh, yeah. And here's, I mean,
you gotta look at kind of the ends justify the means.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm not.
Yeah, right. I don't like it. I kind of swallow hard and support him anyways. But I mean, think about this. He's always been fairly soft, on moral. He never presented himself as a moral conservative. And
he's not a conservative.
He's not a conservative.
Fiscally, maybe, but certainly not moral.
Yet he named 3 Supreme Court justices, and all 3 of them voted to overthrow Roe versus Wade. Ronald Reagan was probably the greatest moral conservative, religious conservative we've had in my lifetime. And guess who he put on the Supreme Court? Sandra Day O'Connor, who was a voice against overruling Roe versus Wade. And then you had George W. Bush, who ran on a pro-life platform and gave us John Roberts on the Supreme Court, who's been horrible Supreme Court justice. And so, Trump
gave us Alito
and
Thomas.
And Clarence Thomas. He gave George H.W. Bush. So I mean, it was a mixed bag. It was So George H.W. Bush gave us Clarence Thomas. So I mean, there's been some good too, but at the same time, Trump basically overturned Roe versus Wade. Now, what I'll say, I got to say this on the other side, is that these justices did not overrule Roe versus Wade because they're moral conservatives themselves. They're not. Or, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito are both legitimate social conservatives. They're going to stand before God someday justified in the way they have, conducted themselves morally. The other 3, Barrett and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, they're not moral conservatives. They overruled Roe versus Wade because it was bad law. Okay. Well, it was a victory. And so, I mean, it takes a little bit of the tarnish off of Trump, I suppose, but it still has gotten to where, it's a states' right issue now.
Well, and I would say, Gorsuch is more in the middle, isn't he? Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I would argue that they did the right thing doing it legally, right? Because once Supreme Court justices start making decisions based on morals, all it takes is an immoral Supreme Court to undo them, right? When you make the argument based on law, then what can they do? They can't take it away.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that great scene from A Man from All Seasons, where he said, the one guy's like, why do we have laws or whatever? He's like, well, you better be careful. If you get cut down all the laws and the devils that are behind you, what are you going to do? Where are you going to run? And I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that, and again, there's a lot of people who as we've talked about in the past, we're not going to go into the black pill people, but people who don't like America because of what it was founded on, and there are critiques to have about that, I think, but I think we'd all agree that the Constitution is generally a good base of law. I mean, it's not it's not a Catholic constitution, which is very unfortunate, of course, but it's pretty moral. It's pretty Christian, you know. And I think that, you know, it's not perfect, and it's not all good. And I mean, like, okay, yeah, freedom of speech and whatnot, but you understand again that freedom of speech has also allowed us to practice, you know, or, you know, to speak, and freedom of religion has allowed us to practice our religion, and that is also obviously objectively good. It's just it's the whole kind of, you know, okay, tolerance or not tolerance of other religions and whatnot. But I don't know, can't have it perfectly, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I think as we've said, though, the good thing that we've seen around the world, that it does seem to be moving in the right direction, and I think that. I mean, I guess I'd ask you guys, and you guys are there. What do you think? What's the Eric? I'll ask you. What's the pulse of the Americans right now? Is it like, hey, we're going full Trump? Is it really the split? You know, like you would kind of expect 50-50 type thing, like it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'd say the pulse for me, from what I see, now granted, I live in a fairly conservative area, is that Trump's going to win in a landslide from an election perspective. I am shocked personally that they're leaving Kamala in. He's the one person in politics who's viewed less favorably than Biden was. So,
Right.
you know, they'll do what they can with the media and all that. And, you know, they'll have, you know, your Democrats who will just vote if they have the D there anyway. But I don't see her winning the states she needs to win the Electoral College. Like, I think Trump is going to win the popular vote. That's my prediction, which is something that a Republican hasn't won a popular vote for how long? It's been a while.
I actually think he's going to win New York.
New York.
I mean, yeah, believe it or not, he's not California, but I think he's going to win New York. But no, I kind of look at this, guys, is the Democrats know that Trump is the Trump train. Nobody wants to stand in front of the Trump train, right? And I think that they're looking at the lay of the land right now. And for me, the fact that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama stood behind and put their support behind Kamala Harris meant a lot. It means to me that they're giving up. And Kevin, that's been your theory for a while, that they're basically just going to give up, do what they can,
4 years,
back in, and because I think that if they end up trying to finagle Michelle Obama in there and have as short a runway as possible, so that they can just rely completely on her star quality and not have to worry about debates or anything else like that, then I think that they're still fighting. But part of me, I'm kind of warming up. I know you've had this idea for a while, Kevin, that they're just kind of giving up on 2024, and throwing in with Kamala Harris absolutely is they're giving up.
Well, you know what's wild?
I
try to listen to some podcasts that aren't just, you know, echo chamber, you know, telling me what I want to hear, because it just gives a bit of a better glimpse of what, you know, I don't know what the actual situation is. And it's really interesting because I've heard a lot of people say, first of all, a lot of people back Kamala. She's a great candidate. Everyone knows that no one, there's not a single person besides her. I don't even know, you know, if she does. No one thinks that. So the other ones I've heard, and I've really heard this said very honestly from people who I think actually believe it. The ones who they've said, these are actually, you know, these would be really good candidates. And it was Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, come on. You know, Bernie Sanders is this radical, and I actually had kind of respect for him before he totally, you know, gave up and, you know, sold himself to to Hillary Clinton. I don't respect his positions, but I mean, I thought he actually at least kind of stood up for what he actually believed in, which are, again, they're stupid ideas, but he actually believes them, I think. But he's like this radical 85-year-old. I mean, he's also an old. There's no way he's not going to be elected. He's too radical. Pete Buttigieg has had one job over, you know, he's the in charge of the transportation, and it's like the worst part of America right now. I mean, it's like, are we being real? What? And I was really trying to be unbiased. Like, okay, let's really let's hear them out. What are the Democrats thinking? And if they really think, okay, it's Pete Buttigieg or it's Bernie Sanders, they're done. I mean, they are absolutely toast for 4 years. I mean, done. And it could be, and I know you got to be careful with saying the red wave, because I think every situation is very different in every state. And I think we get way too up on our horses, like, oh yeah, it's going to be a tsunami. Yeah, that it hasn't happened under Trump. ever.
Well,
So
but we know the basically the architecture, the what underwrites the success of the Democrats have had over, and this may go, for all we know, it may go all the way back to John F. Kennedy, that they've been cheating, and that's going to become almost priority number one when Trump gets in there. He's saying it, that you're going to probably get returned to paper ballots, to cleaned up voter rolls, to no mail-ins, to all this kind of stuff. And if you clean up the elections, the Democrats, they're not that big in number. Now they're growing,
Well,
but they're not that big in number.
I have to share an experience that I've recently had that kind of caused me to lose a little faith in humanity. I knew a woman for 20 years. We used to be blogging friends, okay? And somebody I respected, a good mother, Novus Ordo Catholic that I thought was a basically conservative Novus Ordo, okay? She's actually a writer, really intelligent lady. I happened to get a wind of a Facebook post of hers the other day, wherein she was discussing with a friend Kamala Harris being shooed in, and then their basic response, this woman and all of her friends, and oh, by the way, they're pretty wealthy. These are wealthy women. One of them lives on that golf course in Georgia. For the,
The Augusta.
Right. She lives on that golf course. Okay.
that's wealthy.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of who she is. They basically are saying, oh, well, I guess this is who we're voting for. They didn't like her.
Right.
But the response was amongst all these women, and there were 6 or 8 women chiming in, I guess this is who we're voting for. So I hate
like Novus Ordo Catholics.
Yeah, Novus Ordo Catholic. I know.
Do people understand that Harris had a farther left agenda than Bernie Sanders as a senator? Like that's actually true. That is factual. People can look that up. That is not hyperbole. She was the farthest left. She's nuts, guys. She's everyone's on healthcare. She's full-term abortion. She's insane. Like and that's policy. That's not even just making fun of her laugh and her, idiosyncrasies. She is a terrible politician.
But Kevin, they don't care. They're voting because it is it's virtue signaling. It's the socially correct thing to do in this circle to vote Democrat, and it doesn't matter who is in the slot.
Have fun virtue signaling in hell, ladies. I mean, I'm sorry. That's
isn't it? Well, I know.
I mean, I'm not judging them individually, but come on.
I know.
That's just insane.
It's a lot to answer for.
I know.
Whoa,
These are people who should know better.
How can you vote for someone who is in favor of full-term abortion? I mean, I know abortion is not the only thing, and I think Catholics do get too focused on that sometimes. But I mean, come on, this is really basic. I mean, really, and I understand people don't want to vote for Trump. Like, I respect that. I think people think I'm this guy who just says you have to. No, I'm not at all. That is not ever my point. That you have to vote for Trump. I totally get why you don't want to vote for Trump. It's the lesser of two evils. He is not a good guy. He's not a good man. He's not moral. He's not a perfect president. No. But he's certainly going to bring us a better America than the Democratic Party. I mean, there's just what blows me away is like that's observable. We've seen it. We actually know that he actually did.
Right.
We can. I mean, that it's fact. And how people can just deny that because he's a mean white guy. I mean,
did you see that man on the street interview? I don't know who did that, Benny or somebody. Did a man on the street going around asking people, so tell me, what's your favorite accomplishment of Kamala Harris? Or what's your nobody could come up with anything. It was all
she fought fires with those prisoners really well. You know that story, I'm sure that's one of the famous ones, right? That she kept people in prison longer illegally so that they could fight fires.
Yeah.
She's a nut. I mean, she as Eric said earlier, I can't believe she's the nominee. Like that boggles my mind. I mean, when she was vice president, what did she do as a vice? She had one job. She was the border czar, and that's like the worst part of the. I was like, what? It's so insane. You can't make this stuff.
I think one of the best things that I like about Kamala is if you listen to her speeches, you get to feel like what it feels like to be on marijuana. Because like all the words don't quite make sense, and if they do, it's kind of like high level weirdness. Yeah.
Oh, but I mean, just imagine. Really think of like that woman in a room with Putin. I mean,
No.
are these ladies, your golf course ladies, do they even consider these things? I mean, is it ever considered like, hey, you guys know that China, Iran,
No.
India, Russia, they're all uniting as
I know.
allies? Guys, that's, and I'm not saying they're going to start a war, but they certainly could. Has anyone seen Europe lately? Has anyone seen the military in Germany lately, or I think pretty much all throughout Europe? They're in shambles. They're literally a joke. Like, actually a joke. Like, I think someone was saying that the German military has F-16s. I don't want to say wrong, but I mean, like, they're 20 years behind. I mean, they are truly, because they've relied on the US for, well, 80 years. And so, I think it really started to kind of come to light when Trump was starting to say, hey, okay, no, I'm sorry, guys, we're done with this. We're done being the world police. So figure it out. And I think, pardon the French, but Europe pooped themselves. And I think now you see that. And I think that Europe still has no idea. And they're run by women. Look at the UN. They're run by women. It's run by women. I mean, America, okay, some of them, I'm not saying they're smarter than me, of course. I'm not saying that they're not, but they're still, even if they're the most intelligent, influential women in the world, they're still women. They're still, I mean, I think that matters. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but it's still, you need, I mean, just, what's the UN lady, von der Leyen, right? And just, you see her going into a room with Putin, and it's just like, oh man, just really, and it just makes me sweat, I suppose. And I think Putin's like, hey, let's, all right, and in China too, these guys they're not messing around. And I think if you got someone like Harris, if they cheat Harris in, I would not, it would not shock me if Europe is invaded by this Eastern Bloc. I mean, I think that is absolutely possible.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you got India, China, Russia together, whew.
Yeah. Well, and what they'll end up doing, though, is I think first of all, I think that it's not really possible. It's going to be Trump's going to be way beyond the margin of cheating. I think what's more likely is that you're going to see them try to take down the internet. Like right before the election, they're going to take down the internet. They'll take down power grids. They'll cause as much chaos as they can, and then they'll turn around and call the election illegitimate. All the things that they've been, complaining about from the other side, they'll call the election illegitimate, and then they'll just create chaos and havoc for Trump trying to get in. Trump will probably take over the military and try to put things down, but they'll sacrifice their pawns and they'll have riots, and that's why I really kind of think I don't think that they can win in any cheating. Yeah, no cheating scenario even.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. And I mean, I'm just so worried because honestly, I said these same things 4 years ago. I remember having these same things. I remember talking to my friends here in Germany, like, no, there's no way. Biden, kind of an idiot. He's a longtime politician. He's not really liked. He's been in politics forever. He is like the worm of the Senate. And so and Trump's got all the momentum. And well,
and you can look at the
phony
phony
or not,
you can look
he
at the,
lost. So
yeah, you can look at the phony polls out there, and in 2016, 2020, Trump never led in the polls. Up to election days. Today, at this point, he's been ahead almost the entire time. So I mean, there is a difference there. There's a guy out on Twitter named Ed Krasenstein. If you know anything about Twitter, the Krasenstein brothers, and they're like the standard bearers for the liberals out there. This guy ran a poll: would you vote for Trump or Kamala Harris? And it actually came up, I think it was 78 to 20 or something like that in favor of Trump. And This was coming from the top liberal, and basically all of the polls that you're seeing on Twitter and in anywhere that's not an official pollster is about those numbers. And I think that that's probably a reflection of where we really truly are. Now, how we get that converted to the ballot box is kind of yet to be seen.
Yeah. How are they going to? They're trying to think of new ways to cheat.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you solve the old ways.
Yeah.
I do like your theory that they're just giving up on 2024. Like they saw the Trump train rolling and they're like, well, no matter who we put in, let's not waste anyone on this. Let's just throw Kamala under the bus. Like, that's
Yeah.
making more and more sense as I think about it.
Yeah, and just say a guy missed the shot, whatever you want to believe about that, and I think that it was like they saw him stand up, they saw him pump his fist, and I think they all
It's over.
collectively went, "It's done." And you know what?
Yeah.
What was amazing when you were on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, you could see this. This is what really gave me hope, or whatever you want to call it, that he would beat the Democrats. Is that you started to see like black athletes coming out publicly in support of Trump. Mike Tyson, Jews was a guy, Gardner, Sauce Gardner, several of these guys, pretty big names.
Mark Zuckerberg.
He said he was a badass. I think,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he said he was going to vote for him, but he was like, hey,
Right.
can't deny it. That was pretty crazy what he did, and that really was like, okay, if it becomes normalized to think Trump's okay, or even to like him or to support him or vote for him, that's a huge step, because that's been the whole thing, right? That's been one of the biggest hurdles for Trump, is that you have to be in the closet for Trump, kind of. I think that's what
that was 2016, right? Like every poll was, he was 10 points down, and then obviously that didn't translate because he won. And then we had a little bit of that, I think, in 2020 still. There was still a lot of, I'm voting for Biden, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I think that's gone, at least in my circles.
Yeah.
Where it's now almost, if nothing else, it's almost cool to like Trump. Because he's the badass, like Trump, Zuckerberg.
I think it was 2016. Trump had like a 38% approval or something like that. So, I mean, he was like the lowest approved candidate that had ever gotten in. So, to your point, Eric, I think is exactly right, that people were not publicly saying that they liked him, but they would go in, they went in and enough people voted for him that he got in. So, yeah, and I think that's flipped entirely in 8 years.
So I want to bring in people from the chat. It's been nice to see some of you guys. St. Anthony's here. Thank you, St. Anthony, for joining us from heaven. We appreciate you. He has a comment. I always forget your name. Sorry about that. I think I know he's one of these guys who does another podcast. He does really good
podcast.
So yeah, guys, you can go check him out. And I think it makes a lot of sense, as Eric said. I think that's everything's so weird right now. How they're going with Harris and stuff, I think it does. It just kind of, I don't know, makes sense that they're just cashing it. They're just saying, yeah, whatever. We'll come back in 4 years, and I'm going to be curious in 4 years who they're going to try to find. I mean, because all their as we were talking about earlier, their selections are just terrible. I mean, I think someone like who's in Michigan, Whitmer, she would make more sense to me. Like she's
Josh Shapiro. That's a name that she keeps seeing now.
He's Jewish.
From Pennsylvania.
That was another thing that people are. You listen to these Democrats, but it's seriously though, like these Democrat talk shows, they're like, no way. There's no way that the Democrats are too afraid of the pro-Palestinians. The extremists. They would not put at least a full on, whatever you want to call him, a practicing Jew as a true contender. He's not going to be vice president either. So it's for Harris, and that's also very,
which is mind blowing. Would you have predicted that 4 years ago, that the Democrats wouldn't be able to run a Jewish candidate? That's crazy how fast things move.
They've got some soul searching to do, and I think that if they've given up and if they get routed, and we go through this, Republicans, Democrats, they have to do it all the time. They've got to go do some soul searching and figure out who they are and what they want to project themselves as going forward. And part of that is they've got to get rid of the crazies. They've got to figure out a way to distance themselves from these pro-Palestinian, thugs that are okay with political violence to reach their means.
But I would say I think that's all they have left, right? I mean, all the normal people.
Well,
who used to vote Democrat are now coming to the Republican
Trump's
side.
captured the middle.
On the women.
Yeah.
It's true. Crazies and women, same thing.
Right.
All right. Sorry, ladies, but it's true. I mean, it is. If women didn't vote, we would have a very different political world. Let's just say that, and that's objectively true. And it's absolutely crazy when you see, especially since I haven't seen the numbers since before Trump, but when you watch the voting for Trump, it really is. It's educated women that absolutely just vote, like it's something like 93% or something. It's some just insane number.
Crazy number.
Democrat. It's insane. It just doesn't. I'm not. I don't know. I don't really understand why it is, but obviously they just buy into the Democrat
I'll tell you
agenda.
why it is, because they go to college.
Yeah.
They go to college, and women are women. They fall for it. They fall for the liberal party line.
Yeah.
And then they get married to it, and they stay with it more than they stay with their husbands. I hate to say.
But
So go ahead, Dan.
I was just gonna say, like Janine says below, though, I think in the Black community, they're figuring it out. They realize they've been lied to. They realize that the Democrats have never delivered on anything they promised, and that I think they are legitimately awakening.
Yeah.
And so what should the Republican Party, Trump, whatever, how do you bridge that gap with women? I mean, because maybe you don't. Maybe, as we said, because, and I think he's just saying, "Hey, JD Vance, okay, no, we don't even care. We're just going to lose that vote."
Yeah.
But is there? If he gets in, I don't see him. Honestly, I was talking with, I think it was with Matt about the RNC, the convention. I thought it was awful. I hated Trump's speech. I thought was terrible. All right, it wasn't terrible. It was
Long.
20 minutes in, it started getting
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, what is he? It's like, dude, go out there for 10 minutes, pump your fist, and say, fight, 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 and you won. You just won the election.
He proved that he can literally stand that long. There's that.
Oh,
Yeah.
but no, he totally missed a chance. No, he should have shut up.
But Kevin, here's a
beginning.
weird thing.
Oh.
Here's a weird thing, and I'm gonna just lay this on the line. Being an old lady, I liked his speech because I don't have a problem sitting and listening to something for that long, but your generation doesn't have an attention span. And I actually enjoyed the fact that he was humanizing himself.
Yeah.
I enjoyed his little side trips because I'm a girl. I thought it was a good speech. I enjoyed it. And I know and a lot of people don't, but a lot of that I chalk up to you kids that don't have attention spans. So there's that.
Could be. Yeah, that's yeah, right. I for someone who consistently hosts like 2-hour podcasts, I hope I don't know if I'm the one you get. Though I guess there are times where I start to daze off. That I will fully admit. But no, that's an interesting that I'm sure some people like that. I just thought, I really hoped he was gonna really, really grab the moment and say, like, I totally get it. Literally all I have to do is come out on that stage. I've already proven that I am a tough guy. I am here for you. I love America. I'm a fighter. Honestly, I think he could have gone up on the stage and said, fight, 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 and walked off.
He had Hulk Hogan do that for him.
Right, true. And he's already got the men's vote. See, that little long-winded diatribe would get women. You want to talk about how you get women? He was talking
his first
going over and kissing the helmet of that fireman's suit.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking to the women there.
Well, his first 10 or 20 minutes was very, very, it was very humble.
Yeah.
And very
his beginning was great. Yeah.
Yeah. I did think he got it turned into a campaign speech later on. It's kind of like,
you got more nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and that I think I could have done without.
But the rest of the RNC, they started out. You can tell it's all politicized. Obviously, it's all, hey, who can we bring in? Let's bring in the Jews. Let's bring in a lesbian Black woman. Let's bring in
what was the one guy, the Teamsters?
Yeah, the Teamsters. Yeah. And it's like, I get it. As we talked about earlier, it's just purely political games. It's like, hey, let's literally open up the tent and try to make it bigger. I get it, and I hate it. Like, I don't think that's what Trump is. I don't think that's what Trump needs. I think Trump is someone who actually, if he's successful, it's because he's running on kind of like his guts, kind of like, hey, and I think what Trump went, people like Trump because Trump he's real. And he loves America, and I think those are both real. And there's plenty to criticize about him, but I think those two things are really true. Sure. And so when you have this really fake RNC, which was, I guarantee you, organized by a woman, it just, I'm sorry, I know Ina's gonna be so mad at me because I'm bashing women all the time, and she hates it when I do it, and it's fair. It's fair. But don't you just see it? It's too political. It's too much. Just keep pushing your own agenda, man. It works. People like it.
Yeah, well, what they're out doing, and I don't really like it either. But they're playing the populist card, and they're trying to look at your 50%, 50th percentile voter who is that 50th percentile voter, and let's go appeal to them. And that's soft on abortion. It's just soft on moral issues, and I don't like it. But that's, if you're going to win as a populist, that's kind of how you have to do it.
Yeah, I guess that's the issue with our politics, I suppose. I mean, and I guess that's to me it leans too much towards populism, towards libertarians. Let's just everyone can do it. Let's just be good with whatever. No, come on, stand up for. And that's what bugs me about the whole abortion thing, or just softening on abortion. It's like, and I get it, I get the politics of it, but it's like, is that how, if you start going down that road, where does it stop? Where do you stop to say no, end? This is what I believe. This is my morality, and this is what I'm running on. And if you don't like it, then fine. I'm not going to be your president, and you're going to suffer.
Yeah. Well, and we've lost a lot of. I mean, we lost 2 elections to Obama. We lost an election to Biden. You got a Republican the group that's basically, they're like the football team that's 2-15, and you want to win the Super Bowl, and you want to stand firm on all your principles and everything like that, but you got to go 8-7 first. You got to have a season where you kind of come back and start laying a groundwork for a better America, where you can go back to your. And I don't like it either, but I mean, I understand it.
I think that you guys have heard one of the words that keeps coming up over and over and over again is unifying, or trying to unifying. It's how are you going to unify? We are so diametrically opposed. The Olympics, the people who set up the whole opening ceremonies versus us is so diametrically opposed. There is no middle ground, but what they're trying to do is make a middle ground, which is not going to happen. And then, so what does it have to be? It has to be smoke and mirrors. Trump has got to play politics. He's a businessman. He's doing it the way a businessman's going to do it, and try to pull in as many people from every direction he can. But like Janine says, he does say an awful lot of things that to me resonate. He has said he doesn't believe in the trans surgeries. He's come out against all of that kind of a thing. And what does he always say every time he gets on the stage? What is the first thing he's going to do? He's going to drill.
Right.
I'm right there. You got me. You're going to close the border and you're going to drill. Okay, I'm voting for you. And frankly, I don't know that he needs to say more than that. Then that's pretty unifying right there.
And Kevin, to your point of ends justify the means, right? One thing you have to look at is you have this population of the United States, and you need to win 50.1% of them. Most of the population of the United States does not have good values. I think that's safe to say. Thanks Vatican II. Thanks everything else. And so in order to win an election with a certain demographic of society, you could stick to your morals. Like you or I could run for president right now and we'd get 0.1% of the vote, because that's all that the traditional Catholics make up of that society, right? So yes, it's a little dirty and a little skeezy to say I'm okay with abortion a little bit just to get elected, but you also have to have that awareness of the populace.
Well, I guess my opinion on it would be I would try to avoid it. I'm just like, hey, if they bring it, you have a debate and they say, well, you're gonna take away women's rights, and then you do what the politicians do. It's like, well, you took away weed from the people on the streets, whatever. You turn it on them. So I think you can also politicize that. You turn it so you just don't talk about it. It becomes a point. It becomes a non-agenda. It's just like, yeah, fine, whatever you guys run on that. We're just not going to talk about it. What I don't like, especially from JD Vance, who's supposedly a Catholic and supposedly extremely conservative, if you tell me you're this extreme conservative and then immediately just go, oh yeah, by the way, I'm softening my values on my public opinions and values on abortion because it's politically expedient, then I'm sorry, then you're not really that conservative. I mean, then you're just, to me, it's like, then you just showed me that. What else are you going to bow in? Okay, what now you get elected and Nancy Pelosi's like, in your face, like the little demon that she is, and she's saying, you're going to give me this or else. Okay, do I trust JD Vance to say, nope, Absolutely
Yeah.
not. Or not. If you give into these things, where does it end? And I think that it really, honestly, and I totally see, I really do understand. I do understand the side of the politics of it, but I hate it. Like, I really don't like it.
Not
It really
ideal.
makes me not trust
Well,
them. It's like, sorry guys.
and let me throw one other observation out there, because this goes way back in history. I don't know if either of you are familiar with Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater he was a Republican candidate, and he was one who was unapologetically conservative and was willing to go off the cliff and lose an election despite being, conservative. I think I want to say it was 1964. It might have been. It might have been. What's that?
Oh, that's why I don't remember it.
Okay, yeah, 60. You're right. It was right around that time, early 60s, but before you guys were born. But he's credited with basically the Reagan Revolution. So he lost, and he went down in flames, and he went down fighting, but he stuck to his values. But his values resonated and kind of started to take root despite the 60s and 70s. And by the time you got to the 80s, it kind of flowered with the Reagan Revolution. And so, whether that's a reality or not, I'm not sure, but he's a good example of somebody who stuck by his values. He lost, and perhaps he created a greater good later. Not sure.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? I mean, if let's say Vance is just like, hey, it's fine if Trump's going to say that. I'm not backing down. This is my stance. I'm Catholic. This is what I believe. I'm not going to change that. And let's say Trump loses, and then the U.S. goes more and more into the toilet. And then 4 years later, it's J.D. Vance versus Kamala. Again, and then people are going to be able to say, okay, JD Vance, okay, he is this guy who as you said, who really holds to his values, who really is like, hey, no, this is it, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to be. And people like JD Vance because of exactly his story. I actually want to read his book now that he's kind of in the limelight, the Hillbilly Elegy, because it sounds like a very fascinating story and really inspiring from a guy who really had nothing to becoming what he is now. And it seems like, again, that's a strike for me. It's a real strike when he gives in and says, no, sorry. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess I get both sides. And I think that hopefully, as we said, if they get elected, which seems most likely, unless something crazy happens, which this year has been so insane, I would not put anything past anything happening. But that being the case, if Eric, you just threw me off texting me. I had a train of thought.
Okay, that's two strikes.
Now it's gone. No, I think we're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. And my train of thought's gone, so it must not have been too important anyway. But if anyone in the comment section has any questions or comments for us, I think that it is a good time to start to wrap it up. But we didn't have as much comments as we did last time. I think part of the issue, guys, my title is terrible, and it wouldn't let me edit it. So thanks, Restream. It wouldn't let me I just put that in as a placeholder, and I couldn't change it. So
it could also be your choice of guests.
Could be people just popped on and like, nope.
And I think everybody wanted to see Holly and Mandy.
Yeah.
I think that was true. Boy, that last one, they were the absolute stars.
Yeah.
And I think now I know who actually the stars of the channel, Mom and the two ladies. It's a lady. People love the ladies on the podcast.
That's why you need to stop cutting them down all the time, man.
Watch yourself, Kevin.
I do have to watch them. I do. I'm going to get totally scolded as soon as Ina watches this. Absolutely, and deservedly so. I am too harsh. I am too harsh on women because, again, but it is one of those things when you talk about these things, it does get to be generalized, obviously, and again, there are women that are way smarter and wiser and better than me. I mean, that absolutely. And it is an interesting question about, the vote and what are the issues. And it is just an unfortunate thing that it is the educated women bloc that loses elections. So, I think it is an earned critique. Sorry for you educated ladies out there who are actually intelligent. But yeah, anyway, I'm just digging my hole deeper. Shut up, Kevin. Okay. Vicky, let's see what she says. What does she says? What do you think the left will do when Trump gets in? If Trump gets in, Dad, I think you're.
Yeah,
You
I'll
probably
take
think
I'll
it's
take
pretty
I'll take that
static.
one.
Yeah.
The left is going to do what the left always does. They're going to throw bricks through buildings. They're going to complain on, media and whatever. And so I mean, what's coming from the left. Really the question is, I think, what's coming from Trump when that happens. Is he going to clamp down this time? And I think that what you're going to see is a sharper delineation from Trump saying, you know what, if you want to express an opinion that's counter to ours, go ahead and do it. That's what the First Amendment's for, and we support your right to do that. Don't cross the line into illegal activity. Don't go throwing bricks through through windows. Don't light police cars on fire, or you're going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And I think that to the extent that you've got people in the higher ups who have committed treason, especially and voter fraud and insurrection and all these kind of different things, I think that it's going to be pretty harsh against them. And I think Trump's going to really bring a heavier stick than he did in 2016.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I hope even on the lower levels too. I mean, like these guys in San Francisco, running around naked, for this transgender parade and stuff. This kind of stuff's got to end. I mean, this perversion of our children, and that's actually something. Okay, I'm not saying we need to fight physically for it, even though maybe I am. But there are some things. I mean, and I saw someone comment on Twitter about the Olympics, and they said, she said, I'm not a Catholic, but this is driving me crazy. I think she was a Muslim. She said, I'm a Muslim. I can't understand why Catholics just sit around and do nothing. She's like, it's kind of shameful. And it's like, I mean, I don't know what the thing is we should do, but
Right.
I think it's a very fair criticism. And at the very least, we should absolutely boycott, in my opinion. I mean, absolutely. I think that's the absolute lowest thing we should do is say, fine, you don't get my money. I mean, sorry, and then, I mean, I think we do need to have conversations of what should we do.
Well, what did our Lord do?
If you come, yeah, go ahead.
He hung on the cross.
Yeah.
He did turn over tables, but I mean, he hung on the cross and he became the victim for us. And it took 400 years before they won the victory over the Romans. And I think that's really our guidepost.
But I get, and I of course I agree with you, Dad. But I think, we're gonna get going long. But I mean, I guess if you start, like, Christ died, for us, obviously, and for for himself. It was put on him. So if something's put on us individually, it's like, hey, someone is attacking me or punching me in the face. I think that's kind of the turn the other cheek. Give it up, offer it up, be calm, kind of a thing. But I think if someone is attacking the innocence of our children, I don't think that's the same. I don't think it's the same. It's like, oh, that's not what Christ meant. It's not like, oh, just leave it alone. Let the bad guys take over. And I think I do think that the whole meekness is misinterpreted by many Catholics, totally myself included. I'm not saying I'm this great doer. I'm a great talker, and I
the guy a couple of years ago who took the cross and held it in front of him and walked into a gay rights parade
in Poland.
That's a hero.
Yeah.
That's a hero, and we absolutely should be doing more of that.
Well, and when it's a case, I was going to say, when it's a case of pure blasphemy, like at the Olympics, that calls for action. I mean, that's the first commandment. Hello, first, when you are actually insulting God on purpose, we should be turning over tables.
Yeah, I think that in our children, and I think if you know that your school is giving out or even has in the school pornography or other stuff, you should absolutely minimum bring that to the to the school council or whatever it is you do. I mean, I would sue them. I would do everything you possibly. I think that's where we have to fight. We have to say, okay, if it's our own inconvenience or whatever, fine. But if it's our children and if it's our faith, let's bring it on. And I think maybe we do need to start tearing down some golden bulls, and I think that's something we should talk about more, though probably not on YouTube because as I said, they're probably going to get me for this one. But everybody, I really appreciate it. Who's joined us in the chat. A couple other comments at the end. No questions though. Mrs. Buggy, thanks for coming on. Vicky. Doctor, I'm already forgetting you. We had you on a podcast. I'm sorry. My brain is just not working today. But anyway, everyone who's been here, thank you very much. Eric, Mom, Dad, I appreciate it. We'll do this again sometime. I'll have a slightly better title, perhaps. But I enjoyed it. That's really the great thing for me. It's like, hey, it's just kind of nice to sit down and chat, and
Yep,
have a
absolutely.
little powwow. But I appreciate it. Everyone let us know in the comments if you'd like us to do it again sometime. Doesn't have to be politics, doesn't have to be, Olympics. We can talk about whatever. I mean, we've had shows in the past where we talked about patriotism, nationalism, a lot of isms, which I really greatly enjoyed. I love to talk about history and stuff. I mean, how can we compare what we're going through now to, I don't know what the early Christians went through, or I don't know, talk about the Revolutionary War just because it's interesting. Anyway, everyone, thank you very much.